Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to your Money Map, sponsored by the Alliance for Lifetime Income. I'm your host, Jean Chatzky. Very glad to have you along with us today. I want you to think for a second about the essentials for retirement. The essentials. What is on your list? For many, things like having enough savings, loved ones to spend time with, keeping up with your fitness routine are all at the very top of the list. But there's another thing that should be up there with it, and that's purpose. Studies have shown there are a number of benefits to having a purpose in retirement, everything from increasing your happiness to increasing your physical health. But how do you know what your purpose is or is supposed to be? And once you've defined it, how do you go about paying for it? Joining us today to answer those questions, I've got two amazing guests. First up, Richard Leider, an education fellow with the Alliance's Retirement Income Institute. He is the author of the recently released fourth edition of the best-selling classic, The Power of Purpose: Find Meaning, Live Longer, Better. And second, to talk about strategies for funding that purpose, for making it all happen, Margarita Perry. She is a senior vice president at RBC Wealth Management and a top financial advisor who was just named one of Forbes' best in-state top women wealth advisors for 2025. Congrats on that, Margarita. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank
Thank you
you so
so much.
much.
Very nice to see both of you. And again, Margarita, kudos on the award. That's wonderful news.
Thank you.
Richard, this is the fourth edition of your book, The Power of Purpose, as I mentioned at the top of the show. What has changed? As an author, I know something has to have shifted in order to justify a new edition. And this new edition of yours has a lot of new material, 50% new. So what's different this time around?
Well, what's different is that, as you know, because you are a stand for this, the map of life has changed. People are living longer, and retirement is no longer a short period of time. It could be as long as you worked or whatever you did in the first half or first phase of life. And so we have this whole new life stage. You know, it used to be that it was earn, learn, and adjourn. Well, now people are not adjourning; they're reimagining a new phase of life, which can be a whole lot of different things that we could talk about. But it could be that they're continuing to work or not. It could be that they're reimagining a whole lot of. They're actively aging in so many ways. So one just quick note here is that I created AARP's Life Reimagined Institute. And one of the questions we asked people as they were aging is that now that you're no longer working, how are things going for you? And a lot of people flunked retirement. They felt that retirement was not actually what they had assumed it would be. And so we can talk about that.
Well, what was it that made them flunk retirement? Was it the absence of purpose? And I think it's important as we enter this discussion about how to fund our purpose, how to fund our third act, fourth act, maybe even fifth, to really understand what it is.
Well, it was really when they talked about it, it was that they didn't realize it ahead of time. They often had a really great financial plan, but they didn't have a life plan, and the life plan didn't really take into account their identity, their relationships, their a lot of things that we can talk about. And so purpose, I would say, Gene, in a nutshell, is fundamental. It's not a luxury. It's fundamental to health, to healing, to happiness, and ultimately to longevity. And they didn't get that until a certain time And usually it was about 6 to 12 months into retirement where they would call me back and say, "Oh, now I get it. What should I do?" And I said, "Well, you should take a moratorium. You should do some exploration about different aspects of the life plan and then see if it matches your, with Margarita, with your financial plan."
Margarita, if people don't know what their life plan is, what they want to do with those additional years, is it possible for them to figure out how much money they're actually going to need?
Absolutely. I think the number one thing that I would tell your viewers is take the time, get a budget in place, because if you don't know where you are, how are you going to know where you're going? So if you have a real strong budget, if you have a financial advisor, get a wealth plan, start a wealth plan, because then you're able to map out what it might look like. And if you're pre-retirement, you might have a few years where you can make some changes and adjust your budget and say no to things that you really don't need, that you're spending money on, so you can reach your dreams, your purpose, and fulfill what that next chapter is going to look like. So often folks just retire and then think, oh, I'll figure it out then. And it's sometimes it's a little too late. So I would say get a budget, be realistic about your budget. Most people aren't. And work, spend the time, put the work in right now. That's what I would do.
As you put it, get a budget. Do you find that people these days are living with a conscious sense of where their resources are actually going? Are they controlling the money, or is the money controlling them?
Oh, I think the money's controlling them. I've always said if the money is in your checking account, it's fair game. You'll spend it. Get it out of your checking account. If you do a wealth plan and you realize that, okay, I want to travel, or I want to write a book, or it's going to cost XYZ, open up a separate account. Title it, put a nickname on it. It gives you're more intentional if you do that, and pull the money out so it takes you one extra step to go and access that money, because you want to go out and just spend it and not think about the consequences of it. If you have a goal, and that's what a wealth plan will do, if you have a goal, you're more likely to achieve it. And if you have a separate account that you've titled, it holds you accountable, because if you say, I'm going to put $100 away every single month, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, how'd you do? Are you on track? That's what relieves stress, I think, for a lot of folks, is they have a plan. And most people don't have a plan, and they just go through life, and they put their paycheck or their whatever income, Social Security, whatnot, into a bank account, and then they just spend it. And that's not a good recipe sometimes.
You are watching Your Money Map from the Alliance for Lifetime Income. We are talking about finding your purpose and funding your purpose. If you have a question, if you're watching on Facebook or on LinkedIn and you've got a question or a comment for Richard or Margarita, please drop it in the comments. I'm happy to weave that into the conversation. Richard, when you talk about purpose, you talk about two different types of purpose: big P purpose and little p purpose. What's the difference? Do we need one? Do we need both?
We need both ultimately, but big P purpose, often people think about as kind of noble. I have to do something cause related or big legacy related. That's maybe true, but little P purpose is the answer to the question: why do I arise in the morning? Why do I wake up? Why do I do what I do? There are 1,440 purpose moments in a day. So every day is a chance to feel good about making a difference in somebody else's life. And that's the little P purpose. My big P purpose is to help others unlock, not discover out there, but unlock in here the power of purpose. My little P purpose is to make a difference in one person's life every day. And when I wake up in the morning with that intention, it makes my day feel, there's a felt sense of relevance, and I feel good about life and on those days. So I think that's the little p purpose. And I also think that there's a distinction between goals, as Margarita talks about, and purpose. Purpose is the why of the goals. Why do I want that goal? What is it that's important to me about making that budget or doing the things that I think are fundamental that Margarita talks about, which are essentials as you talked about. So I think purpose is the why of the goals. And so we can talk about that, but the relevance here is that people want to feel relevant and visible and want to make a difference in life from cradle to grave.
I know you have a 6-step process for helping people unlock their purpose.
Yep.
We could spend the entire show talking about it, which we're not going to do. But
Right. Yeah.
can you take us through some highlights so that if people don't have a handle on their why, they can at least start the process of
Yeah.
figuring it out?
Well, of the 6 steps, the first one is reflection. So I think that's the important one we can talk about here in our time. And that is looking at the good life, reflecting on what is the good life to you today. And there are 4 characteristics that we have studied and I have researched for years about the good life. And that is place, people, right work, and purpose. And so if you look at the why question before Margarita's what questions, how do I fund this, is am I living in the place I love with the people I love, doing work? It could be paid work, not paid work, all kinds of different ways of looking at work with a reason to get up in the morning. And if you have an answer to that, your financial advisor and you and your whomever you are with can really look at, well, what is the good life? Because the good life has been around since Aristotle and Plato and many others. And often it's about health and money. But behind that is this whole business of place, people, right work, and purpose.
Margarita, as you listen to Richard talk about purpose, one of the things that occurs to me is that uh, we don't just want this in the first year of retirement. We want this
Yeah.
throughout our retirement at all ages. When you're developing a wealth plan for people, how do you make sure that they're on track to save and invest enough to meet these obligations? And then part 2 of the question, how do you structure their portfolio or their holdings so that this is something that is not going to leave them 20 years down the road?
No, that's a good question, because life gets in the way. Nothing is static, and I think a good wealth plan has to be revisited. It's not one and done. I think on an annual basis, you should sit down with your financial advisor and talk about what's been going on in your life. Are you on track? I do feel that you have to shift your portfolio when you get towards retirement because you can't be taking on as much risk as you might have done when you were working, when you had time to accumulate funds. If you're retired, then what you have, unless there's a big inheritance or something that's coming down the road, you really need to look at what you have and be realistic and where you're spending and stay on top of your budget. Um, it takes, and also with that, a lot of folks don't take into consideration that maybe sources of income that they had coming in might change. An example would be you retire, you're married, you have 2 Social Security checks that are coming in. Well, if one spouse passes away, that could really change your lifestyle. You lose that income. There are other sources that you can, as plan B, which I always look as a plan B, like an annuity that will give you a lifetime income stream for your life that may augment that loss of Social Security from a spouse. I think it's important to be realistic on, there are going to be times where family members come in and are going to need money. That's tough. When I do a wealth plan, I always look at what if scenarios, because if you can take care of at least somewhat plan for unexpected things down the road, you can have that in your back pocket and you won't be caught flat-footed. And so you always want to make sure that you have safe money set aside to cover at least 6 months of your monthly needs, so it reduces stress. But planning and always going back and revisiting it, as we know right now, just everyday goods are costing more than they did 3-5 years ago. That's going to continue. So it really is important to have an advisor that you can work with that'll help you through your changing times, because early on you may be much more active in travel, and later years you might have a life event that you might need some care. Do you have a long-term care policy? These are all things that I really try to bring out in the process of doing a budget, a wealth plan, and helping them feel like you can attain your goals and not run out of money.
These what if scenarios can rear their head at
Yeah.
any time. Richard, in
Yeah.
the book you write about a health situation that served as a wake-up call. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and how it both shaped your financial plan and your sense of purpose?
Well, what a personal and great question, Gene, as always. Uh, I have a health, I've never been in the hospital. I'm 80 years old and I'm totally active and working full time and doing what I love. And I had a health episode which put me into surgery, and I'd never been in the hospital since I was born.
Wow.
And that, I always say this, Gene, there's money, medicine, and meaning, the three M's. We need enough money, we need enough medicine, health, but we need meaning. And all of a sudden, as I'm laying in the hospital looking at the future, I'm looking at meaning. I mean, hopefully I'm going to survive, which I did very nicely, and I'm here now as a result of that. But what is it, the next phase of my life going to be about? What's going to be meaningful about that, given that I have enough, which I do, and I have, medicine or health, and then meaning. So I think that it really downloaded or made relevant, deeply more relevant to me. I need a reason to get up in the morning, which I have, and I teach others to have as well. And so I think a lot of people have an idyllic default purpose of, I should say, meaning of not retirement model in their mind. But when that happens to shift differently, what do? And so one of the key ingredients was, who is in your court? Who are your people who are there for you? Who is in your sounding board? Who do you talk to when you're scared to death that you're going to die? And so I think one of the key ingredients is to make sure your financial advisor is on that sounding board. But even more important, or not even more, but important, is who is your committed listener? Who can you talk to? Who can you share with? I'm scared to death in spite of it all, or I need to talk about this. So we need a sounding board, and our financial advisor definitely needs to be on that sounding board.
I know for you, and I hope that this isn't too personal. One of the things that you discovered was that at this particular point in your life, you didn't have the right advisor. How
Right.
how how did you come to that conclusion? And what were the characteristics that you think we need in our advisors, not just financial, but legal and spiritual during these later years of life?
My financial advisor had an old narrative. The old narrative, as I mentioned at the beginning here, was learn, earn, and adjourn. At 65, here's what you need, Richard, to retire. And I said, his name is Larry. I said, Larry, I'm not going to retire. I don't intend to retire. Here's what I want to do. And so he could not quite get the new narrative. So I think Margarita is about the new narrative, where whatever it is, it's helping you to understand that it's not just the old narrative of, at 65 I'm going to retire, because what if I'm not going to retire? And I look, for example, one of my clients is the Mayo Clinic. I've done a lot of work at the Mayo Clinic. Well, when you look at that, 10% of the workforce, 450 people at the Mayo Clinic are over the age of 65. They're still working. Well, what's that all about? Well, their new narrative is different than the old narrative of retiring. So that's just one example. But the fact was that I had to change financial advisors because he just couldn't get that I wasn't going to retire. And I said, look, I need a plan, but I need a plan because I'm going to invest more in my company. I'm going to do this. My wife and I are going to continue to uh, trek in the Alps. We're going to do a lot of different things, and it's not going to be that. So anyway, I needed to have somebody who I really trusted, who was able to hear my narrative, not just his or her narrative.
Margarita, I'm wondering, when somebody comes to you and they lay out a narrative like Richard just did, I'm not going to retire. I'm going to continue to work. I'm vital. I'm still earning. I'm still useful. This is what I want. How do you plan for that while at the same time plan for the fact that many people don't have a choice? That
Right.
something may happen along the way where you don't retire, but you are retired. Either the job goes, or there's a health scare, or something else happens. How do you play both sides?
Well, that's where when I do a wealth plan, you do what you know to be the facts, that you're going to continue to work. You're going to have cash flow coming in, so you're not going to be worrying about meeting your monthly nut. But more often than not, retirement is not on your own terms. People end up retiring because of a health issue, a job is eliminated. So you have to be able to have a plan B. If for some reason you have a health event and you cannot work, well, can we look at your plan and still make sure that we're covered? So you do want to have safeguards in place, and having a long-term care policy for a life event is super, super important.
Yeah.
Look at that when you're younger, because it's cost prohibitive when you get older to have one. Look at a hybrid policy where, gosh, if you never use that long-term care policy, I have a death benefit for my beneficiaries. The other thing for folks that may not have enough funds to do that is carve out some of their funds and make sure that there is enough, that now that we have interest rates a little higher, that you have a cash flow coming off of your investments. And I think that's with a good advisor that is listening, and you have to have somebody who's going to listen to you. The days are gone where and I remember my mom says, "Oh, the doctor knows everything. You can't question him." Doctors, advisors, yes, you should be questioning, and they should be listening to you, and not feeling dismissed. Which, Richard, it sounded like you were being dismissed. Like, no, that's not what I'm all about. So
Right.
find an advisor that wants to listen to you, and let them know what your expectations are of the relationship. That's key. And if they're not listening to you, then it's time to move on and find someone that will listen to you, like you did, Richard, because life is too short and nothing's worth not having the right plan for you.
Right.
One plan does not fit everybody. Everybody has a different scenario. And so it starts with having a trust your instincts. If this person, you really feel like that person has your best interest in heart, that's key.
There is there's the issue of having money to spend. But once that's solved, there's the issue of actually being able to, from an emotional perspective, spend your money. Research from the Alliance for Lifetime Income shows that 46% of American retirees say that spending their savings creates an anxiety and takes an emotional toll. It also shows that one of the biggest things that people struggle with is prioritizing what to spend their money on. Margarita, you've mentioned the word budget several times. You also talked about annuities, which I know from looking at the research can help people get over that spending hurdle, because when the money comes in the form of a paycheck, and the next one is going to arrive like a Social Security check, we have an easier time letting go of those funds. But what else do you do? How else do you structure a person's financial life so that it's not anxiety provoking?
It isn't that the truth. It's easy to spend money when you're accumulating and you're making money, but all of a sudden when you're retired and there's no other funds coming in and you're relying on your investments and you're relying on Social Security, it adds stress. I do think that a lot of stress comes from the unknown. And if you do the wealth plan, then you're going to know what you're spending. So that's going to remove one layer of stress. Then the other part is you got to give yourself permission. You've worked your whole life to be where you are today. And unless you are really intent on leaving a big legacy to family, and if it's just you and your partner or whatnot, it's okay to spend that money and end up with zero. Nobody wants to end up with zero, but it is okay to start peeling off. Used to be that, oh, I'm only going to spend the interest in my account. Well, that's kind of tough. In the last 15 years, the last couple of years, interest rates have gone up. But when interest rates were really low, that wasn't enough to cover your monthly nut. So in structuring a portfolio, you have to realign the portfolio to what your needs and wants are. When you have a budget and you know how much you're going to need every single month, can you back into that number? So that may be that, yes, an annuity would help if there's an unlikely situation where you lose a second Social Security. A lot of folks don't have pensions anymore. It's a great way to give you some certainty that there's some cash flow coming in your life, but other investments will help you do that. Dividend paying stocks, government agencies, government notes, bonds. Look at structuring part of your portfolio that's going to meet as best as you can most of your needs. You need to have growth in your portfolio. We are living longer. The whole topic of longevity has caught a lot of people off guard because they're living much longer than they thought. So now you're living into your 90s, and that's where you have to stress that plan to make sure that I live to 94, am I going to run out of money? But I do think that is looking at different alternatives in investments today. We have a lot more choices than we used to. And there are protected investments now where the risk of, I don't want to put my money in the stock market because I might lose it all. There are new vehicles out there right now that can help protect that. So it's worth looking at. And that's something where, a financial advisor can help you with.
Richard, as you're talking to individuals and as you've been doing your research, do you see this in life, that people have trouble letting go of the financial resources that they've had, that they've worked so hard to grow?
Well, yes. And part of it is, what's their narrative? What is their story? Not in the rear view mirror, we're looking backwards, but in the windshield looking forwards. The windshield's 100% bigger than the rear view mirror. What do they see as their new narrative? And so I try to substitute this language from retirement to graduation. You're not retiring, you're graduating you're moving into a new phase, a higher grade of life. As the E.B. White, the American essayist, said, I arise in the morning, torn between a desire to save the world and a desire to savor the world. This makes it hard to plan the day. Well, I think we want to both savor and save, but we know how a vacation, for example, you just came off a vacation. A vacation, if it's too long, can actually be protracted, can be boring. It's like, I want to get back to something. Mm-hmm. And so vacation comes from the same root word as vacancy. But what is going to substitute for that is vocation. What can I do with my life and my energy and my choices here and my money to make choices that will give me the relevance, the visibility, the fulfillment? I just was on a panel with Dr. Vivek Murthy, who was the recent Surgeon General under
Hmm.
both Obama and Biden, who came up with what he called the triad of fulfillment. He said so many people are isolated and lonely as they retire. And
Mhm.
what they need is relationships, service, and purpose. And I believe that to be true. I think, you can have enough money, but enough for what? What's the why? And so the
Well,
why is about those three things.
and I think it's an important point that this is not asset restricted, right? You write in the book,
Right,
and this is a quote: "Purposeful living is not a luxury for the affluent. It is for
right.
everyone,
Yeah.
regardless of socioeconomic status."
Yep.
Um, the things that you're talking about, making connections, having strong relationships, they're not expensive, right? Taking
No,
a walk, not with a friend, not
right.
something that costs you a ton of money. But Margarita, I'm wondering from your perspective, how much is this idea of being able to live your purpose tied to a person's financial situation?
Well, I think the fear is that you can't have your purpose in life if you don't have enough money. And I think to Richard's point is it's not everything in life costs a lot, but it's the fear, and it's fear stops us from moving forward. And I think
Yep.
if you have if you eliminate that stress or that emotional stress of, oh my god, I can't do this because I don't have the money, then that allows you, it frees you up to move forward. The other thing too, Richard had in your one of your books, I think you were talking about just saying no. I find with a lot of some clients and friends who, especially moms, where they're always helping their children, and
Yeah.
to the detriment of themselves and their retirement, thinking, oh, well, my kids will take care of me when we're older. Well, maybe that's not in your narrative. That's not what you want.
Right.
And so I do think that if you can just take that monkey off your back and realize that I'm going to be okay financially, that frees you up to explore the next chapter in your life and what that's going to look like and what can you do and what's your purpose, what's your dreams. And I think everyone can achieve that, but I think people are held back because the fear of the unknown of financially I might not be able to do that, and they're afraid to look.
Yeah.
Well,
I
well,
think to just build on one point of that, which is I agree with everything Marguerite says. The idyllic life of ease, bucket list, and freedom is not there for everybody. Even if they have enough money, it's not there for everybody. And so we need to have to get rid of the false expectation that that's going to be taken care of just because you have enough, because it's not. You still have to make choices about who you are and how you're going to show up.
such a good point. We know from research, and we also know, Richard, from the story that you told earlier, there can be these communication gaps between financial professionals and their
Mhm.
clients.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from both of you what tips you have for people to better communicate with their financial professionals about their purpose and about what they actually want to accomplish. Richard, what do you want people to say? Margarita, what do you want to hear?
Well, I would just suggest what I talked about earlier, and that is I want my financial advisor to ask me why. What is the good life for you? What is it you're trying to do here? And then let's look at the numbers. But let's start with the why. And let's not start with a bucket list or a narrative that you don't have. Let's look at a narrative that you have.
I
And
totally agree. I totally agree. I'd love for clients to come and help me understand what's important in their lives, and also and I always ask them. There's some clients that want to have communication every single week or month or quarter or annual. What is it that you're looking for? What are your expectations
Yeah.
of me? And then we can have an open, honest dialogue of what that looks like, and moving forward. I
Yeah.
also I think that a lot of times there are some financial advisors that have a very cookie cutter approach, that everybody goes into this lane, this type of investments. I've been doing this for too many decades. Everybody is different. I want to know about the person. I want to know who's in their life, what's going on, their family, because they may be, we are the peak at right now, peak 65 and boomers. And a lot of them are sandwiched between children and parents.
Yep.
You have to understand that's their narrative right now. That's what's going on. So I think honesty is super important. Being honest with your financial advisor and not holding back. And I think the financial advisor has to be honest too. It goes both ways.
Money rule number one: personal finance is more personal than finance.
Absolutely.
Always,
you got
always. Last question for both of you. We like to leave viewers of this broadcast with a tactical place to start. Richard, if you're looking for your purpose, 3 tips to get somebody going. And Margarita, if you're trying to fund your purpose, the first couple of things that you think somebody should do.
Okay.
Richard?
Well, I call it the napkin test because people ask me, Gene, doing what I do and writing what I write. Got a minute, Richard? Can you tell me what I should do with the rest of my life? I call it the Got a Minute School of Coaching. And I said, well, take out this napkin and write these 3 things down. Gifts plus passions plus values equals purpose, equals calling. What are your real gifts that you want to give? What are your, so it's really starting at the core. And what are your gifts? What are your passions? What are your values? If I can understand those things about you, I can help you to live the life you want to live. And I think when people ultimately at the end of their lives, and I've talked to so many people at the end of their lives, wishing that they would have, known about purpose and mattering earlier. Mattering matters. Gifts, passions, and values matter. And so I would start there.
And Margarita?
Well, we've talked about budgets. That would be number 1. You got to find out where you are right now so you can plan for your future. ALI has a great little workbook that I would recommend everybody look at as well, which is finding your purpose and funding your purpose. I think, Richard, you were involved in creating part of that.
I was.
I think that's excellent. And if you don't have a financial advisor, there are a lot of tools on ALI's website as well as online where you can try to do a wealth plan. So I would do that. That will help relieve a lot of the emotional stress about what do I do in my next chapter in life? How am I going to survive and make it happen?
Amazing. Margarita, Richard, thank you so much. It's been so great hearing your ideas of why purpose and money go hand in retirement. And on a separate but related note, as we talk about tools from the ALI, I wanted to say that I know that we all sometimes get lost in the complexity of planning for our non-working years. That's especially true because of the financial jargon that we all have to try to understand. To help us, tomorrow morning, the Alliance is releasing a wonderful new tool on its website called Ask Ali. Ask ALI. This virtual assistant will help people understand some of the complex concepts and terminology important for retirement income planning. I hope that you all get a chance to check it out. You can find it at our website. It's protectedincome.org. Richard, Margarita, once again, huge thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Sure. And thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you.